Waters there, and was already in the draft, but will he sign with the Pittsburgh Pirates? 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832. That is the number to dial if you'd like to join us here on the Rundown, right here on Fox Sports Radio 1400, of course, around the world on the iHeartRadio app. I've also got some stuff to look at here, your Heisman Trophy odds. Yeah, that's kind of some interesting stuff there. We'll get into that. Pretty interesting stuff when it comes down to the front runners for the Heisman Trophy. And I say that because when I look at the odds for some folks, how they come up and down is interesting to me. So we'll get into that and how some of these guys you've never really heard of. Kansas, by the way, is a gong show. We've talked about that. Les Miles goes up there. Bad things happen. They had what was it, Mangini that was up there calling people fat, and he was a fat guy. Calling people lazy and all that. Remember that? Well, Kansas is a problem. We'll get into that. Pro Football Focus put out their quarterback rankings. Now, the interesting part about that is that where they have South Carolina ranked is about where you would expect them to be. I don't think that any Gamecock fan goes into the season thinking, you know what, Luke Doty's a guy that's going to be, a top 5 guy. I don't think anybody on the Gamecock saw that, roots for the Gamecocks is thinking that. But they do have the Gamecocks really low there. We also have 247 Sports has predicted their projections for the ACC. We're going to start with that. As SCU Online, he's wanting to get into basketball season, saying fire Brad Brownell. Yeah, there's that too. But when you look at this from 247 Sports, as they put out their projections for the ACC, and they'll have their stuff for the SEC as well. Shout out to G Bama Boy watching online. Appreciate him. Clemson is the pick to win the title. Surprise, 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 right? The interesting stuff is the teams behind them. In the Atlantic, it's Clemson, NC State, followed by Boston College, Florida State, Louisville, Wake Forest, and Syracuse. In the Coastal, they've got North Carolina. Now, Clemson got 21 first-place votes. North Carolina got 15 of them. Think about that for a moment there. There are a lot of folks that like North Carolina. And you know what? Here's the funny part. The people that are all up on the North Carolina Tar Heels, they know 2 things about North Carolina. They know Mack Brown and they know Sam Howell. They couldn't tell you that the team's going to be without Chaz Surratt, who was the gentleman that played quarterback but then ended up moving to linebacker and ended up being a great linebacker for them. They couldn't tell you, a lot of them, that North Carolina lost a bunch of their running backs. They had like 3 running backs that were outstanding. They couldn't tell you about Daz Newsome and the other guys that Sam Howell was throwing the ball to. I'm not knocking North Carolina. Let's make sure we understand that. But we have our bookcase of accountability that we talk about. We're going to put this over there on the wall. And my thing when I see this is that there is just a lot of love for North Carolina in the ACC. I mean, and it's not to be disrespectful to Coach Brown, for goodness sakes. But, wow, 15 first-place votes for North Carolina in the Coastal, followed by Miami, Pittsburgh, Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, and Duke. Your player of the year in the ACC, they've got Sam Howell, DJ Uiagalelei, Brian Brzee, and Phil Dracovic. Dracovic, of course, the Boston College quarterback there. For coach of the year, this was interesting too. 7 votes for Jeff Hafley. Mack Brown with 6, Manny Diaz with 3, Jeff Collins with 2, even though they're projecting Jeff Collins' team to finish 6th in the Coastal. Dabo Swinney with 1, Dave Clawson with 1, Dave Doran with 1. I don't understand what the deal is with people with Dave Clawson, man. I mean, just insane when you really stop to think about it. They also talk about some of the early games that will impact some stuff there. So, of course, you've got Miami and Alabama playing early on. They've also got Michigan State and Appalachian State in the mix too. So Miami's got a tough out-of-conference schedule. And they'll be seasoned up and ready for ACC play. So that's going to be an interesting matchup when North Carolina and Miami meet up. So looking forward to that. That's an interesting set there with that with those guys in the mix. Both teams are thought to be a lot more. I don't have a lot of faith in North Carolina. I think Miami comes down to De'Aaron King, but a team that's often overlooked is Pitt. Pitt does a couple of things pretty well every season. They run the ball and they play defense. If I'm looking at 3 teams and I think, okay, each one of them's got questions, give me the team that can run the ball and play defense. I'm not saying Pitt's going to win the Coastal, but would not surprise me a bit if they did. Tom online says Phil Steele has the Gamecocks running back room ranked 5th in the SEC. Bookshelf accountability that. Yeah. Who are the 4 ahead of them? If you're driving around in your car right now and you know anything about college football, tell me 4 running back rooms that are better in the SEC than the South Carolina running back room. I will wait for your call at 803-978-1832. Someone's out of their mind over there with Phil Steele's stuff, man. Yeah, I don't know if they're projecting it with where South Carolina's offensive line is going to be, but as far as overall talent, wow. 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832. That is the number to call if you'd like to join us here on the Rundown, here on Fox Sports Radio 1400, of course, around the world on the iHeartRadio app. Thanks for that over there, Tom. I didn't see that, but my goodness. 5th in the conference. I think they may have one of the best running back rooms in the country. The SEC's leading returning rusher and the potential of Marshawn Lloyd. Yeah, wow. Kind of stunned by that. Just got an email earlier about the ACC. Of course, ACC kickoff is next week. They've announced who the players are that are going to be coming with both schools. You've got for Clemson, they're going to obviously bring Dabo Swinney and 3 players. Matt Bokhorst, the offensive guard, James Skalski, the linebacker, and DJ Ugunglele, the quarterback. That's who's coming for Clemson up to ACC kickoff. So we will see some other players too. Boston College is bringing their quarterback, Phil Dracovic. Let's see here. Some of the other players that are in the mix here. Jeff Collins is coming from Georgia Tech, obviously, with with Jeff Sims, their quarterback. Malik Cunningham, the quarterback for Louisville, will be there. Also, De'Aaron King will come from Miami. That's going to be interesting. NC State head coach Dave Doran's going to bring his quarterback, Devin Leary. Let's see here. And Pitt is bringing Kenny Pickett, their quarterback, who seems like he's been at Pitt for 800 years. We've had to talk about Kenny Pickett at Pittsburgh. Interesting stuff there. Wake Forest is bringing Sam Hartman. Yeah, so that's some interesting stuff there. All right, 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832 is the number to call. If you'd like to join us here on the rundown this afternoon, respond to the ACC picks from 247 Sports, which will go on the bookcase of accountability. Tom, with the line of the day there. Phil Steele says South Carolina has the 5th best running back room in the conference. Are you buying that? Nope. Not buying that at all. Interesting stuff there. 803-978-1832. That is the number to call if you'd like to join us here on the rundown. This is Fox Sports Radio 1400. Clemson Dave, you realize the Gamecocks have the SEC's leading rusher returning, right? Come on now. Let me go grab something. I'll be right back. Yeah, we'll see about the whole Delp pick. You might be right about that. We'll have to check on that, man. That's going to be interesting too. So I'm looking at LSU's depth chart at running back. John Emery, is that the guy they're going to have at running back? Huh. Tryon Davis Price. I'm still going with the Gamecocks there. You know, I think Mike Leach is still searching, man. Still trying to figure out what he wants as far as a roster goes. Eight zero three 978 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832 is the number to call if you'd like to join us on the rundown. I've got some quarterback numbers here from Pro Football Focus, their elite section of quarterbacks. This is was kind of interesting to me. They've got Oklahoma with Spencer Rattler, obviously. And then you've got let's give you some of the rest of the list here. That's their elite. The tier 1 is their elite. Then the only guy they've got there is Spencer Rattler. In tier 2, high ceiling quarterbacks, they've got Sam Howell, De'Aaron King from Miami, Dylan Gabriel from UCF, Michael Penix Jr. from Indiana, Matt Corral from Ole Miss, Grayson McCall from Coastal Carolina. Grayson McCall from Coastal Carolina. Interesting there. Also, DJ Uiagalelei behind Grayson McCall, ranked 8th. Miles Brennan from LSU at 9. Keaton Slovis from Southern Cal at 10. Carson Strong from Nevada at 11. Kent State's Dustin Crum. Arkansas State's Lane Hatcher. Florida's Emory Jones at 14. Check this. Who am I missing so far? Missouri's Connor Bazelak at 15. Mackenzie Milton at 16. These are high ceiling quarterbacks, as they say. Wake Forest, Sam Hartman's at 21. Alabama's Bryce Young is at 22. JT Daniels is at 23. And they say the Heisman hype for Daniels may be tempered just a bit. Yes, he's a former 5-star recruit and put together as one of the best performances of the 2020 season in his debut as a Bulldog, but his outputs in the other 3 outings, in addition to his pass play, are cause for concern as a true freshman. Ranked 118th at the position in PFF grade, 127th in turnover-worthy play rate, 129th in PFF wins above average generated, and looked like the same player in the 2019 opener before tearing his ACL. Under that logic, I think you have to look at the roster that he played with at Southern Cal too. He has more gadgets and things that he can do with at Georgia, and I think the Georgia offensive line is better. So yeah, you're going to have some happier feet at Southern Cal, in my opinion. I don't think that their offensive line is as good as the offensive line for Georgia. But at 23, they've got him behind Bryce Young, behind Sam Hartman, who was an interception throwing machine in the bowl game, and behind a ton of folks there, just above the quote, not good, not great section. I don't think that's fair to JT Daniels. I do think that he has a lot to prove. I think that the 5 games that he played last season were not exactly the toughest games in the world to play against. But to put him behind a couple of folks like Sam Hartman and even Mackenzie Milton at Florida State, really, I think JT Daniels has more wins against Power 5 teams in an abbreviated season last year than Mackenzie Milton has in his entire career at Central Florida. I mean, that's an interesting way to look at it. Also, Mackenzie Milton is coming off of an injury where, let's just be honest, his leg looked like a question mark, and he's having to battle back from that. So there's that. Interesting stuff there. Also, they've got Hendon Hooker from Tennessee, and Boston College's Phil Jerkovich. This guy's 6'5", 226 pounds, and can move around. He should be rated higher than Hendon Hooker from Tennessee. So I understand that this is all a mathematics thing with them, and I get that. But some of these rankings are just kind of silly, in my opinion. South Carolina, by the way, is ranked in the needs significant improvement section at 125 out of 130. Now, I think that a lot of that has to do with a lot of the guys haven't played. So just some food for thought there, especially for the folks that think that I rail Georgia all the time. I don't think it's fair to put JT Daniels down that far. Behind Emory Jones? Are you out of your mind? What a mess. So Pro Football Focus has their stuff out there. That's the way that it is. We'll have to see how that works out. Jerome says that the Gamecocks should have held on to Colin Hill. Jerome is being silly today. I do have a story about Kansas I want to get into in a moment. I know you're thinking Kansas football, Rob. Why do you want to talk about that? Yeah, some scandal going on at Kansas. Kansas and scandal are synonyms right now. It's kind of the way that it is. We've got to talk about the South Carolina fan base. I'll get into this now. This was kind of interesting. If you're on Twitter, J.C. Horn apparently advised, I guess is the term, Chris Graves, the 4-star athlete that was going to Miami. He chose the Hurricanes over LSU and South Carolina. The Herald report included a quote from Graves that a conversation with Horn steered him towards UM to play for former South Carolina assistant Travarius Robertson. Now, here's the thing with this. If you're on Twitter, and I think we've talked about this before, if you're on Twitter and you're tweeting at young men that are making decisions about where they want to play college football, shame on you, especially if you're being negative towards them. But then you're going to bash the first defensive player taken in the draft from your school. The brightest light from last season's team, other than getting rid of Will Muschamp, is the fact that the first defensive player taken in the draft is from South Carolina. But let's rip the guy on Twitter, Gamecock Twitter. You know who you are. You don't have the balls to call up here today and question me about it, because I've got the tweets. We've got the receipts here. We won't put them out on the air, but you know who you are. Ranting and raving against J.C. Horn because he told the guy, Travaris Robertson got me to the NFL. Got me where I was the first defensive player picked. He was asked a question and he answered it. Stop being so pissy when someone's honest. And that's not just Gamecock fans. That's across the board. Clemson fans, you do the same thing. Everybody does it. When it comes to recruiting, just stay off Twitter. If you're questioning players or even one of your own, for goodness sake. Horn came out on Twitter and said South Carolina wasn't even mentioned. It was about Coach Robertson. That's it. So Horn had to come out and defend himself and say, hey, I'm a Gamecock for life. And Gamecock fans still bitching at him. That's just the way that it is, man. It's insane. 803-978-1832. The quote was, I just think T-Rob will get me to the league. What a mess. 803-978-1832 if you want to talk about that. People need to stay off Twitter. That's pretty much what it boils down to. Couple of comments from some folks online. When will the NCAA bring down the probation on Tennessee football? You know, there's like talk amongst a lot of the I think that there's a big section of people that think, you know, Tennessee's not going to get much. Tennessee should get hammered. Let's not forget South Carolina got penalized for too much what was it? Too much frosting on cookies or something. I mean, that's a legitimate thing that was a violation. Yeah, that happened. And the reality is that if it were South Carolina or Clemson or whoever would get thrown to the wolves, Tennessee may get off with nothing. There's two different agendas when it comes to sports. There really is. 803-978-1832. We'll have more when we come back. This is The Rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400. Well, hold on now. Hugh Freeze was calling the whores. Let's be honest. Here's the funny thing about Twitter, man. People will rant and rave on Twitter, but when you sit them down and you actually talk to them, they're reasonable fans. They're just, and this is with a lot of them, they just want their team to be good. They want their team to be good. And I think a lot of them have this mentality of they're going to support their team regardless. And I'm fine with that. I'm completely fine with that. Oh, goodness. But you know what? Hugh Freeze is doing God's work. That's great. But, you know, you got to get to a point where you look at it from this perspective. If one parent sees something like that, and they see that they're going to take and hold that completely against your fan base. So we'll talk more about that when we come back. I'm glad we agree about something there, Beg and Megan. He's not, I mean, worst case scenario, if we were throwing rocks at everything that he does, he's at worst a top 15 quarterback. Someone asked if I fell asleep in a tanning bed. No, I went to I took my kids to the water park yesterday. So there's that. I should get in a tanning bed because my butt's pale. Yeah, I mean, you could put him in the top 10. I'm just saying, if we're throwing every rock that we can throw at him, 15 would be the absolute worst, but 23rd? Come on, man. They're trying to get some old. By the way, this will be put on the bookcase of accountability. That will definitely be heading there. Water Park was outstanding. Mike Shula. Jimmy's great. All right, the folks in the chat room are on fire today. We were talking about people making mistakes, etc., on Twitter, etc. And we were talking about Blake says Hugh Freeze was made one wrong butt dial, which is not true. But Hugh Freeze was, messing with the ladies. Anyway, Jerome says Hugh Freeze was doing God's work. That, my friends, is the quote of the day. Hugh Freeze was doing God's work. By the way, we were talking about South Carolina fans, and not just South Carolina fans. Please don't tweet at me at Rob Sounds Good and says, why are you bashing me as a South Carolina fan? We all don't act like. Yeah, I get that. But this is another example of, if you're on Twitter, stop with the nonsense of, you can talk about your team and you can talk about the coaches. I'm fine with that. They get paid millions and millions of dollars. They get paid enough where, you can rip them on Twitter all that you want. But when it comes to high school kids and their recruiting, just stop. That should be like sports fan law, like number 3A. If you're going to be on Twitter, don't tweet at high school kids. That's pretty much the way that it works. Golden Blue Dude on YouTube says, don't use Twitter if you don't like to argue. You're exactly right. People like to argue, and I'm all for that. We like to have a debate on the show, and I'm fine with that. You can call up and call me an idiot, and I'm fine with that. All right? But the reality is that you're not a high school kid. It's completely sad. Now, we're raising band geeks in my house. I am proud to say that. We don't have any 5-star athletes coming up in our home. The daughter plays volleyball. She's 5'10". She might get to a point where she can play volleyball at a college level. I'm fine with all that. But the reality is that we don't have those kind of athletes there. But if we did in our home, if I saw some of the stuff that I saw from not just Gamecock fans, but other fans too, because pick your fan base, you got idiots out there, that would completely turn me off to a school. If that's the first thing that I see, and it's not a fair representation of all of the fans. But I'm saying that is, if you want kids to come to your school, remember, mamas have Twitter too. And when mama sees, hey, you blankety blank 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 idiot, why are you even thinking about going to that blankety blank 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 school? They're not going to like it. So just some fan training there. We can all agree upon that. Doesn't matter which team you support. 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832 is the number to call. G Bama Boy says, I have no issue with South Carolina fans. UGA fans are the ones I can't stand. They're hideous online. Summertime champs every year. So good stuff there. Golden Blue Dude says South Carolina fans think they win a national championship every time any SEC team wins the national title. Thank you for that, sir. Yeah, well, good stuff there. If you want to call up and talk about that, we'll be happy to take those calls. We got this story about Kansas, and when I talk about Kansas football, it's not exactly something that you're thinking about. The only thing good that's come out of Kansas is they had like a a defensive back that was a pretty good player that decided to transfer to South Carolina. But according to a report from the Kansas City Star, when Les Miles was coach at Kansas, a player, Caperton Humphrey, said a feud with teammates escalated to the point they stormed into his apartment and threatened his family's safety. But after he told KU, a confidential settlement was reached, the Star reported. Humphrey said during one incident, he had an argument with a pair of teammates and the next day discovered that someone had loosened the lug nuts on one of his tires. The final resolution was KU's athletic department agreeing to pay him more than $50,000 in benefits to go home after he reported threats and harassment from teammates. Miles met with Caperton and the other 4 football players and reportedly asked both sides to apologize. Neither side obliged. So let's get this under perspective here. According to the report, now we don't have the full story here from the other players, but this report from the Kansas City Star says Les Miles got all of these folks into a room together and said, all right, apologize. You guys need to apologize. You're all on the football team. You need to apologize. And neither one of them obliged. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why Les Miles is at home and eating his own grass instead of the grass that's on the sideline at Kansas. You're telling me as a leader of men, you can't get 4 people to get together? You can't get 4 people to get together that are on your team to apologize to someone. And not even half mean it? You can't get them to do that? What happened here? College football is a much better place with Les Miles off the sideline. It really is. And then Kansas tries to cover it up. Let's give him $50,000 to shut up and go home. What in the world is going on at Kansas? By the way, this is the same Kansas that decided, hey, we're going to give our basketball coach, who is allegedly into paying players. I mean, it's pretty much come out that's going to happen with them. We're going to give him an extension, a lifetime extension, but we're going to do it while we're looking for an athletic director. And then while we, once we get the athletic director, he's just going to have to deal with this lifetime extension. We talk about schools that are just basketball schools. Kansas should implode their football program. They're showing once again that they just don't care about it. What an absolute mess that is. Miles, the report said, offered a different solution. The players would settle their differences on the practice field, pitting them against each other head on in full contact drills. So let's just line up. We'll have full contact drills and we'll see what happens. That's what Les Miles wanted them to do. We're going to line you guys up on the field and full pads, and you guys can settle it that way. What a mess. Caperton said, I came out of that meeting and I was like, blank this. They don't want to talk to my family. They don't want to do anything to help me. Why sit in this misery and fear for my life over something dumb? A few weeks later, Caperton was gone, driving more than 700 miles back home to West Virginia. KU Athletics said it would pay for the trip and more as long as the family agreed to never tell the story. Let's just pay them up, ladies and gentlemen. That's what we're going to do. This, by the way, this is what you don't do. You don't. We want to give you $50,000 to shut up and go back to West Virginia. Wow. Some comments online. Jacob says JT Daniels has got to be the top 10 or 20. I agree, sir. Blake says that Georgia Clemson Vegas point spread may end up being a pick'em by kickoff. Yes. I think it's going to be close to that. It's at 4 now. So it may drop. You might be right about that. 803-978-1832. Final segment of the rundown when we come back. This is Fox Sports Radio 1400. Yeah. Adrian Martinez from Nebraska. I don't think, hold on. Where would I put him compared to where they would put him? Let me see where he's at on the list here. Mm-hmm. All right. Adrian Martinez is at 75 for Nebraska. 75 for Nebraska. Mr. Hucker football. Oof. I'm having some I'm looking at some of this, man, some of the guys that are I'd go to war with some of these guys that are up here. It's Kenny Pickett is a 4-year starter in the ACC. Yeah, that's not that bad. Wow. I truly. Oh, anybody want to guess? Take a wild guess where Bo Nix is. We'll talk about that when we come back. Dylan says Kansas is just a dumpster fire in this incident. It just shows what kind of person Les Miles is. Yeah, I'll read your whole comment when we come back. That's a good, well put out point there, Dylan. Thank you for joining the show today. $46 is a good guess, but not quite enough. Final segment of the rundown this afternoon here on Fox Sports Radio 1400. Looking at the Pro Football Focus quarterback rankings. Northwestern's Ryan Helinski is at 116. Putting that out there, former Gamecock. Jake Bentley at South Alabama's number 107. It's interesting. 2 former Gamecock quarterbacks are ranked higher than where the Gamecocks are now. Yeah. But the other one that's really interesting too is with Auburn, with Bo Nix. Bo Nix from Auburn checks in at number 67, in between Ohio's Curtis Rourke and ECU's Holton Ahlers. I don't know who he is, so I don't want his mama, complaining to me. But that's where that young man is. Wow, on Bo Nix at 67. Kenny Pickett, by the way, from Tennessee is at 52. Husker football says, do I think Nebraska could win the West this year? Nebraska is a team that it seems like they've got all the tools that they need as far as fan base. It seems like they should be better than they are. And I remember growing up in Nebraska being great. Remember the whole black shirt defense and all that? Now it's like, We'll have to see with Nebraska. They're a wait and see type of thing. Jerome says Jake Bentley can lead the nations in interception to touchdown ratio in that order. You might be right. Dallas says Clemson's Brzee is going to stand up before the first snap, look JT Daniels in the eyes, and says he's coming to rip his head off. Okay, I can't read the rest of that. You can if you're following the chat, which is on the Fox Sports Radio 1400 Facebook page. Check that out. Husker football says we still have the black shirts, but it doesn't mean as much. Yeah, you're exactly right. Remember when that black shirt used to be a thing of pride? It was like, to put on that black shirt for the Nebraska defense was like pride. Now it's like everybody gets a black shirt. You could be terrible, still have a black shirt. Not mocking your team, I'm just saying. Golden Blue Dude says Florida will finish no higher than 3rd in the SEC East. Phil Steele, who is getting some love on my bookcase of accountability over there, he might get his own section, has the Gamecock running back room ranked 5th in the SEC, does not have Florida ranked in the top 25. If we take all of it out of the mix, though, I was looking at this earlier today. Florida is a team that they've had 2 top 10 finishes, won the SEC East last year, has a coach that is considered a top 25 coach, even though I think he's an idiot. The recruiting classes rank in the top 12 over the past 5 seasons. So with all of that, you would think, okay, they're a top 25 team, right? If I just gave you all of that and didn't tell you it was Florida, if I just said, here's a team that won the SEC East last season, went toe-to-toe with Alabama in the SEC championship game, gave Alabama the best game of the year, by the way. Not that Alabama was completely challenged, but let's be honest, they were the closest to making the Crimson Tide sweat a little bit. To give you all of that, you would be like, yeah, it's a top 25 team. I think people I don't think they like Dan Mullen. I kind of believe that. And after the way Dan Mullen acts with some of the stuff he says in his press conferences, hence the LSU game with the shoe, the stuff he says, you're just like, yeah, okay. I don't like them at all. 803-978-1832. Husker Football says he never watched the 90s teams. He wasn't born. Go and find those games on YouTube with Nebraska. They were outstanding. That's a fun Saturday. Pick you some 1990s Nebraska stuff if you're a Nebraska fan and watch them just run up and down the field like crazy. Like they could line up and tell you what play they were running. Didn't matter. It's great stuff. 803-978-1832. 803-978-1832 is the number to call. If you'd like to join me here on the rundown this afternoon on Fox Sports Radio 1400, I do have updated Heisman odds. I may save these for tomorrow, but it's interesting. Some folks are moving up. Some folks are moving down. Yeah, we'll get into the Heisman odds tomorrow as those have moved up and down a little bit. There's rumors that the Gamecocks are going to have a big commitment on Wednesday. We'll have to see who that is. Shane Beamer is winning the offseason, ladies and gentlemen. And I tell Gamecock fans, you know what? You need to have this season, if you go 2-10, you just need to have the same mentality. We're going to be better next year. And I know Gamecock fans are tired of hearing that. But the reality is that that's what you're going to have to look at. With all of the talent that you lost and the way that Will Muschamp left the team. And I know people get sick of hearing that. But on the offensive side of the football, it's almost like he forgot to recruit for a while. Just saying. 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832 if you want to get into the rundown this afternoon. Dallas says Kadon Slovis wins the Heisman. I don't know about all that. We'll save that. Going to the bookcase of accountability today, though, our Pro Football Focus's quarterback rankings for the upcoming season. We can give you that. We'll have that up there as well as the stuff from 247 Sports, where they were actually talking about the Heisman. Brad Crawford says, for some reason, I sense this summer that Clemson quarterback DJ Uiagalelei isn't getting the amount of national love he should be heading into his first season as the Tigers starter under center. He's my Heisman pick this fall, as long as he plays enough snaps in the second half of games against inferior competition. Clemson will not have a Heisman quarterback or Heisman anything because of exactly that. Their schedule is not going to tee up and give them anything as far as their having enough snaps to put up snappy numbers, basically. All right, tomorrow on the rundown, we'll look at we've got tons of stuff we're going to get into. Of course, America's team, the Phoenix Suns, lost last night. They're trying to keep the NBA Finals going so that we have something cool to watch for a while. Just saying. I'm an apologist. I admit it. Also, Bubba Chandler signed, or didn't sign, but was drafted by the Pittsburgh Pirates in the third round of the MLB draft. Now the question is that $878,000 is the draft slot. Will that be enough of a bonus to get him to leave school? That's going to be the big thing with that this week and the coming weeks here. He has until August 1st to sign. Will he sign with Pittsburgh? If not, Clemson has kind of helped on their backup quarterback issues. Realistic one says, I think DJ will be considered for the Heisman. Trevor was. Yeah, I can understand that. I'm just saying I don't think there's going to be enough snaps. All right, 803-978-1832. By the way, I'm about out of time today. Why I'm giving the phone number. It's in my head to give you folks the phone number. But, you know, somebody who gets it right is my buddy Lawton Swan.
Stop looking at me, Swan.
He's here with Clemson Sports Talk. You can find him on the iHeartRadio app, also ClemsonSportsTalk.com. I'm sure he has his opinion on whether Bubba Chandler is going to sign with the Pirates or not. By the way, Gamecocks lost an infielder. His name is on the tip of my tongue, but was their highest rated prospect, drafted in the first round there. Clemson also lost a catcher. They're going in the first round too. So those two gentlemen, I am sure, will sign. But
stop looking at me, Swan.
Yeah. Lawton Swan, Clemson Sports Talk. He's up now from 4 to 6. I'm on Twitter at Rob Sounds Good. Podcast up at 5 o'clock. We'll see you tomorrow on the rundown. This is Fox Sports Radio 1400. Hey, thank you guys. Appreciate it, man. Yeah, hit the like button, please. Help the channel out if you guys don't mind. No one's good at picking the Heisman, man. It's stupid. The Heisman's a stupid award. You guys are awesome, though. Thank you. We'll see you tomorrow, all right? Every day at 3 o'clock, ladies and gentlemen.